hopefully our debate and thought for food has been thoroughly nourished, and now we have the opportunity to get into our expert panels and to guide us through that with her own unique expert moderation. It's my great pleasure to welcome your moderator for this morning's panel sessions, Cristina Nobre Soares. Cristina, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Muito bom dia. Eu vou ser a vossa moderadora durante o dia de hoje.
Good morning. I'll be your moderator for today, this morning included. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today, especially in this type of session, a lot of debates, talking about issues about the future, and just like Antonio said in his opening speech, reminding us that we're all part of the solution, and that the future is not exactly just a place where we're going to, but it's also a place that all of us need to build together. I just heard this the other day from someone, and I just thought it makes perfect sense to leave you here with this. So I would like to start our first debate. We're going to talk about a number of topics related to the sustainability of water. Our first speaker will be Eduardo. Please come join us here at the stage.
Muito bom dia. Não chamou os outros? Muito bom dia. Gostaria então
Good morning, Eduardo. I would like to give you the floor, 2-3 minutes, so that you could talk about a topic that I have not yet announced, but in English it's farming practices in Southern Europe with sustainable water use and farmland habitat management. That's your topic for today. And what I would like to know, Eduardo, because this debate will be in Portuguese, what are your first thoughts about this main topic? Well, first and foremost, good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing us to be able to speak Portuguese. So good morning, everybody, now in English.
Here in front lane, it's a pleasure to have this discussion with you in our country. So thank you for coming to Portugal in this occasion. Dito isto, eu passaria
Having said this,
passar a falar em português.
I'll switch back to Portuguese now. I'd just like to add that climate change issues, sustainable use of water in the Mediterranean is something that's very dear to our hearts, not just now, but for a couple of years ago already.
Foi utilizada uma expressão muito curiosa pelo ex-comissário do Ambiente, pelo Yanis.
The former Environment Commissioner Janusz used a very nice expression, I think, because he referenced Egypt and Iraq, and he said that they're now going through a less water-stressed phase compared to our own region. If I think about it, I think that the changes we're now going through today are just deeper than the ones they are going through themselves. They are in a desert area, so they have the amount of rain that they have for that particular area, and now we are in a situation where in an area that's being in a way invaded by this desert. So this is coming across the Mediterranean in a way and quote-unquote invade Europe. And the first ones to have to deal with that invasion is obviously the southern Mediterranean countries. But if we take a look at Spain or Greece, that are also struggling with the impact of this type of invasion and desertification, climate change related, of course. We are a little bit in a better situation, as it were, for a simple reason, because we're also perched on the Atlantic Ocean, which influences greatly the Portuguese climate, and it's very different very different from what you see in those other countries. So this means that Portugal has two distant realities, a northern one and a southern one. I'm most worried about the southern one when it comes to water usage in agriculture. When we sometimes try to explain this, that it's not just because you use less water in terms of total volume, that you're going to actually better manage and save water. It may sound like a paradox, but it is true. It is important to have strategic reserves, storing, a very conservative and sensible use of the underground groundwater, so that we can use that as a tool to fight off, to stave off this sort of desert invasion, whatever we want to call it, that is. So water is a weapon against climate change. In order to wield that weapon, we need to have access to water, and to do this in this in the flow, that if there's nothing standing on its way, it will just run its natural course. We need to be able to store that water and save it, so we can use it when we need it the most, when the climate change aggression, as it were, hits its peak. We have Alentejo, the southern region of Portugal, very, very wide, very big. It's leading by example what it means to strategically manage water. So we have the Alqueva Dam, the biggest one in southern Europe, that allowed to transform this entire region that's still under this threat of desertification, but it now, through sensible and conservative water management, allowed that region to still be economically active, but also socially active, because now we have more people living in the land, living in that region. And when we talk about sustainability, it's a tripod, almost. So, environmental sustainability, which we are now here underlining. There's also the social sustainability, which is of paramount importance, but also the economic sustainability. If any of these legs break, now the whole table, the whole tripod will crumble. So that's pretty much the image. I'm not sure if I'm going on for too long. Just let me know, because this is very dear to my heart, as you can see. Just one more minute, says the moderator. So as long as we don't question the role of the water, as it were, I think our job is to use the knowledge we've been gaining for the past couple of years, and the one that we're still learning today, to implement a sustainable use of water, so that we can strengthen the other legs of the table, of the tripod. Without this tripod, everything will just be an illusion, as it were. That's why it's so hard to bring this to the table in Brussels, because Europe's reality is so far away from this region, where we're talking about a region that can go without water for 6 months, for instance. Temperatures that go well over 40 degrees Celsius during the day. If not for agriculture, and it desperately needs water to be viable in those type of situations. Without water, we won't be able to overcome this huge challenge that is we're living now, transition phase, just exacerbated by climate change. First and foremost, thank you very much. Let me also correct here
obviamente não necessitará de apresentação.
Just correct what I introduced you a little while ago. I got your name a little bit wrong. So it's Eduardo Louveira de Souza, the president, chairman of the Portuguese Agriculture Confederation. Now I'd like to bring to the table here our second speaker, Thierry Lescaille, Secretary General of European Landowners Organization. You have the floor, please.
Welcome, Thierry. You have 2 or 3 minutes, and the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 2 or 3 minutes to share your ideas about this subject, please. Be welcome.
So thanks a lot for welcoming us in this very nice room. It's a pleasure to be with you, and as said, it's also a great pleasure to meet our partners, Eduardo, both Antonio, João, and all of you, colleagues and friends who are sharing the same concerns. And I think for us, it's really an issue. We are facing challenges. We are facing the need to protect biodiversity and farmland habitat. And when I was a young farmer, I was invited to destroy hedges and environment. It was a time where we were committed to produce food. My comment is only that we should not blame the farmers for that, because they were forced by public authorities. I've been resisting, I've been able to preserve, but many of my colleagues were crushed by the authority. Also, we should not be too arrogant and thinking that we are the only one worldwide to be able in the European Union to take care about environment and biodiversity. It is not the case, because we have to consider what our colleagues and friends, we are in Portugal. Let's take the example of Brazil. In Brazil, they have a legislation taking care. There is a huge effort. I don't know, they are doing perfectly well. I don't say that. I don't say we are doing perfectly well, but we should be aware that it is part of the competition. And Janes Potocznik was pointing out the need to take care of biodiversity in our trade agreements. So we know where the way it's paved for. So what is it about, Christina? It is about valuing and committing to the protection of wildlife and biodiversity of a given area, the one of our farms. As the only support system we have in Europe, the CAP offers us in the 2 pillars, the to-come integrating eco-scheme. We don't know exactly what it will be. It's still a bit strange, but we will know that it will represent 25 to 30% of the support payments of the CAP. And then we have the mechanism of the 2nd pillar and all the agri-environmental schemes. So we can say, well, there is an offer, but these signals are not sufficient. We need more signals. We need a recognition. We need to invite the farmers to join, but we need also a clear recognition of what they are doing. It would be insane to say, guys, we guide you, and you are doing nothing. And this is things at Yellow we have been doing for long, and I had the pleasure to do that long time ago with you, Eduardo, and with Jean at NPC, and then with many farmers' organizations, such as the French grain producer. We have been launching the concept of the wildlife estate label. It was considering territories managed in favor of environmental purpose. Well, it was new. It's a public and private effort, but we are rewarding, acknowledging all the good things done by the land managers, the landowners, the farmers, the foresters on a site. Now, you know, it's about best practice. And after that, we launched a second effort, and we came here also with the concept of multifunctional farm. Farms are multifunctional. They are not only there to produce food, they produce ecosystem service, they produce public goods, they produce a lot of things. Society doesn't understand that. We have to make sure they do. And this leads me to the idea that we have been publishing recently, 1 month ago, a study for you about the small wildlife of fields and meadows in Europe. It's a tool for you to negotiate with your administration. So I have the pleasure to offer you the book, Eduardo. Use it in your, when discussing eco schemes. There are a lot of good ideas. It has been drafted by farmers, by politicians, by scientists, and by all of us. So it's not a top-down approach, but it is a down-to-top approach, a bottom-up. And in this idea of a bottom-up approach, we are launching a new concept just to make sure people understand what you are doing, all of you in your daily management. We call that AgriLife. AgriLife is a label creating a network of farms, developing sustainable practice, and with a list of best practice. What we look like is to make sure you understand, or people understand, that you are supported by a scientific committee, including the European Commission, the Joint Research Center, and NGOs such as IUCN. You heard this, it has been said by both Antonio and Eduardo, you are crucial. It will not happen without you. It has to be done with the farmers. Now, why are we doing this? Because it is needed that you, the producers, are appropriating the rules, are appropriating the effort. It is your effort. It is not the effort of society. You have to do that in favor of society, but you do that in your own management. So the goals are establish a network for strategic thinking, give and deliver guidance and support, and put at disposal all the exemplary methods you are implementing. And we are considering different approach of farming. You can be an organic farmer, you can be a conventional farmer, you can be a conservation farmer or a regenerative farmer. It doesn't matter. All those techniques can provide good achievement to the society. And you can use different tools. Is it agroforestry, reforestation, precision farming, carbon farming? You know, there's a lot about carbon farming. I think we will have the opportunity to discuss that later together. But it's about how you do increase the organic matter in the soil. And as we know, soil are fundamental. The quality of the soil is our future. We always say the soil is the capital of the farmer. Already in the 17th century, Jean de La Fontaine was writing novels about the good farmer managing well the soil for the next generation. That's the life of the farmer. Next generation with children, there are other guys who will take over. So we are setting up a list of criteria, and I give you as food for thought some example. Stillness on your soil, on your farm, the existence of measures that help sustainability balance between agriculture, silviculture, fishing. It's about the connectivity. We have also to take into consideration the biodiversity surface of your land. And it's not only about agri-environment, it might be the natural plot inside your land, on your farm. It's not only the agricultural land you are managing, it's the global concern you are managing. There are conservation features you are also managing. You have most probably on the farm a communication program. What are the species you have on the farm? So there are about 15 criteria to be taken into consideration. And I invite you to join this effort with colleagues, with the European Commission, supporting this with members and non-members of Yellow. It's an open system, but the ambition is to show that we are part of the solution and that we are there for the solution. So that will be my main message today. Yes, we are there to manage biodiversity. We do that with pleasure. It should not be a treat. And we have to establish and educate some politicians that they have not to come with the power of the trade, but they have to come with the power of the partnership. We are partners, we provide a solution, and we are ready to do it.
Thank you, Thierry. Vamos então agora passar a palavra ao nosso terceiro orador.
Let's now go to our third speaker, Alfonso de All, specialist in water
Bem-vindo, Afonso.
and
2 ou 3 minutos.
water conservation. You have the floor now for 2-3 minutes, please. No sound yet. No.
Tenta resolver o seu problema. Se calhar temos
Let's-
uma pergunta do público.
Because we do have a question from our audience addressed to Eduardo. Do you think
O problema da desertificação dos países mediterrâneos?
that the CAP issues have to do with desertification of the Mediterranean countries, also have to do something all connected to the PAC, to the CAP? I think it's a trick question, right? But let's see, I think we're looking at it the wrong way. There's been some finger pointing to the agricultural sector, especially the intensive agriculture sector, which is now being portrayed as the main culprit for desertification, because precisely it uses a lot of water. It just wastes a lot of water. But agriculture does not waste water. It's used by agriculture, it changes its place, it goes somewhere else, and then it comes back. And sometimes it's agriculture itself that staves off desertification. Now, this whole concept is very hard to explain to somebody that has been feeding into this narrative just the opposite. Because they think that if you're wasting or spending this resource, that you're contributing to the scarcity of that resource. So, in order to fight this, we need to properly manage this resource. We're now we're living in a period of time where we have prolonged drought periods, and then sometimes we have floodings right after that, consequences of climate change for sure, and we need to adapt how to live in that context, so really to understand how important it is to preserve and manage water usage. When it comes to the CAP and the political discussions around this topic, now, they don't look at this way. And I think CAP is so complex when it comes to everything that brings to the table that we have little space almost to focus on this point here. And I think we need to get this right. And other measures for the efficient use of water connected also to the second pillar. I think that will be broached when we get there. And I think we'll now introduce other restrictive requirements in the first pillar, also related to environmental and ecological conditions here. Also, always with this goal of finding this balance. But this also brings costs with it, and we need to understand where these costs are coming from so that we can then make them very clear in all the measures in the first pillar or in the second pillar. So, answering your question, I think yes, in a way, but I also think that we should be more clear-minded and have a clearer goal, especially if we want to bring the fight, a fierce fight against climate change. Because we cannot change where the planet is going. Climate is changing. We can influence or aggravate that change, but it's not just because we are going to introduce some changes in our lifestyle, in our eating habits. I think that was a point mentioned here a little while ago, that we're going to change everything. that we're going to reverse climate change. They have climate change as two main actors, the planet itself, and then the second part, which is the aggravation that the human behavior can bring about. And because we're here, when we exist, we do bear responsibility. And the key word here, says the moderator, is balance. I think Afonso, is online now with us, with sound. Afonso, the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry for this hiccup. Well, we're all now used to this, now that we're all doing all of these things remotely. I would like to thank you for the invitation.
To thank the organization and most of the organizers locally as well.
So now I'll speak Portuguese. So many relevant topics, so many important topics, but I think the thing that matters most to me is the risk management connected to the use of water by society as a whole, but by the agricultural sector, which is one of the major users of water. Risk management is a missing piece in the approach to sustainability, to water management, and to resource management in general. But this has to do with the scarcity. There's an imbalance. The scarcity is an imbalance between offer and demand. It doesn't depend on just how arid somewhere is, but it depends on also the way we manage the existing offer and the demand. In order to have sustainable water use, this water use must be supported by a management of the offer that is protected with a safety margin that allows us to deal with the sways in offer, storage, etc., which is part of our climate and the water systems that we use. I'd like to draw your attention to something. I'm a water management consultant for WWF, which is a major organization worldwide. We have long defended an integrated approach to climate issues, but when it comes to water management, we have to think that in the Mediterranean, since the 50s, water consumption and use has increased tenfold. And yet, in some areas it rains more, in other areas it rains less, as seems to be the case in the Mediterranean area. And in Portugal it varies, it depends on how we handle statistics, but the trend is to see less rainfall, which can be up to 10% over the past 30 years. So an increase of 1,000% in demand and a 10% decrease in offer. So we're now, this water scarcity is of more concern nowadays in the Mediterranean areas of Europe, more so than in Egypt or Iraq, because some arid countries have sustainable systems because they use the available resources in a very wise way. The problem with Portugal is that our water use is at its breaking point. So the use of our resources is on a very thin line because we don't have any margin for when we have droughts, for instance. And who pays for this system? Firstly, agriculture producers, people who have an intensive use of water, people who see their access to water restricted whenever there's a drought or when there's a tougher year, when there's a problem with quality and in the system itself. They will be the first people to feel it because the priority is urban supply, so the agriculture farmers will be the first ones to pay. And whenever there's a drought, there's also an economic cost because there's compensation, etc. So there's less money, there are fewer funds for other areas. And who benefits? Well, the farmers benefit whenever there's a lot of rain, but whenever there's little rain, then only a few benefit. In our documents, we also had a note that said that the Mediterranean systems will remain high-risk systems until someone takes some action to face up to climate change. I'd say more than this, I think we should have preventative management of water, because if we don't use water in a preventative way, therefore ensuring the service of the ecosystem, which is a public asset, I think then we'll have problems through and through. Thank you very much, Afonso. But picking up where you left off and what some other speakers have said, I'd like to ask, if there's water scarcity, and whenever there's scarcity, the word management becomes more and more important. How can we imagine the three pillars that Eduardo talked about: agriculture, people, and ecosystems? How can we strike a balance? Well, this should be a priority, and I'm sorry to disagree with him, but someone took a stand on Alqueva, and that's where I come from. But without prejudice to the great economic value of the Alqueva project and other similar projects, the fact is that in the systems with very intensive agriculture, the social pillar and the environmental pillar have serious issues, as has been clear over the past few weeks and has been reproduced by Portuguese media. Not to say that there's no place for intensive agriculture. There's soil, water resources, and some places that have the potential to be submitted to intensive agriculture, but we must guarantee the sustainability of the other two pillars. And when it comes to water management, I think we need to do all what is being done in the area of energy. We must think that our first priority is the efficient use of water, reuse, recycle, and a not wasteful use of water. And then we need to think of several uses and dams, because all of this has impact, and they will prevent us to have access to other resources of ecosystems, and only when they're missing, because we're having a problem with the sediment in our coastline, and that's the time when we notice that we're having problems and issues. Thank you, Afonso. I'd like to recall everyone, and also the people present here, that you can access the box in our live stream at FFA.tv in your browser. You can ask questions, make comments, and we need your cooperation. We need you to participate. This is key to us. At this point, I'd like to present to you our final speaker, Bosco Torremocha. Welcome. He's the Director General of Spirituosos, Spirit Drinks in Spain. Welcome to FFA.
3 minutes to say your ideas about this so important team. Thank you.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Allow me to start expressing my gratitude to the organizers and you all participating in this event of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. It is my honor. My name is Bosco Torremocha, and I'm the Managing Director at Espirituosos España. Espirituosos España is one of the most respected members of Spirits Europe, a European sector that creates 1 million jobs, one of the biggest agri-food exporter, but 12.5 billion euros every year, and a sector that collects every year almost 24 billion euros through direct taxes. It's a grassroots of a spirit of tradition, a spirit of growth, and of course, a spirit of sustainability. Representing the interest of an important sector in Spain, 7,500 million euros value, centenary companies of big, medium-sized, and small companies create wealth, employment, and promote in a responsible way the Southern Europe, Mediterranean, and Iberian way of life. Not in vain, distillation entered in Europe through Spain some 13 centuries ago. The reasons behind Espirituosos España's sustainability strategy are, above all, the sense of responsibility of the sector and the companies, and how we can contribute better to our communities. The other reasons why is the anticipation of the farm to fork strategy and any other new regulations to come, and especially after COVID, high expectations and alignment with EU recovery plans to support the transition to the new model. As an agri-food sector, we are proud to rely heavily on agricultural produce, grape, wine, cereals, fruits, herbs. On tradition, it is not by chance we're on top 3 among EU with most geographical indications, and southern food and beverage culture to which we belong. We have spent almost 2 years preparing this strategy in close relation with our companies and experts, starting with a detailed audit and assessment of current status back in 2018, in order to complete a 360 round comprehensive analysis of our sector, taking into account the whole chain, of course, water usage, but also agriculture, raw materials, greenhouse emissions, energy ratios and renewables, waste and byproducts, packaging, transportation and logistics, and also social responsibility programs. On the basis of this great amount of work, we have designed a roadmap to 2030, bold ambitions, including milestones in 2025, and commitments in all areas to be progressively achieved. Special attention is given to all elements. To outline one of the keys is, of course, water, a critical input both for production processes, heating and boiling, and also as an ingredient of the final product. The aim is to continue to improve efficiency and water treatment. A great example of this is #1 whiskey brand in Spain, in the outskirts of a national park, beautiful mountains and clear river waters, assuring 100% water sustainability already throughout the whole production process. Landowners, farmers have, of course, a great sense of pride and ownership in this matter, but we are all responsible and we can all contribute. In Europe's spirit sector, we are not the only ones, but we want to be the first in class, hoping to become a best practice for our colleagues. We can all be part of the solution. Let's work in partnership. No need for impositions. Let's collaborate. When human beings work together, we can fly to the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Bosco. I have a question for Thierry. What mechanisms for regional and international cooperation on water and farmland management would be improved and how? What mechanisms for regional and international cooperation on water and farmland management would be improved and how?
I think we have many opportunities, but we have to learn how to manage water on our farms. And we made a lot of experience. And I can just tell you a personal experience. When I start to farm, the objective was to dry the land, was to get rid of the water to farm easily. Today, due to climate change, we observe that we need to keep the water. And so we need to reorganize the water system and make sure we are keeping fresh water in the soil. But then came a second problem, the nitrate problem, quality of water, because we get eutrophication in the water if we do not spread the manure on the right way. So there's a lot of experience to be acquired to understand how to manage things properly, to get rid of the water, to not put pesticide in the water. And the CAP has been moving during the time. Years ago, there was no limit. We could spread alongside a water course. Now we have to respect the 6 meters. I suspect that in a near future it will be 9, or we will have an obligation to put environmental features alongside the water course. So it's really important to look for the quality and to look for keeping the soil fresh and then appropriate irrigation. We have changed drastically our irrigating system. I can set up my irrigation system from my pocket, from my iPhone. I can follow from my iPhone today. 10 years ago, there was no sense. We could not use that kind of technology. I know immediately if I have a problem with the irrigation of the water, and we can take action. It's a lot we have at our disposition, techniques allowing us to do things properly. So we have to invest into technique. We have to also invest into very simple tool. You know, I made the experience of beaver on my farm. And the beavers were not welcome because we thought they cut trees. It's true, they cut trees. But if you have the beaver building his dam at the right place, you can manage your field. You have to build, to learn how to cope with the beaver and to establish a partnership with the beaver. You still say, this guy is naive. No, I was crampy, but I learned from the beaver. And today, as I'm not living too far away from Brussels and the institution, I'm a spot for, a show spot for visitors, for ministers from abroad, for commissioners. And I always showed the beaver dam. And people say, oh, you are a good guy. But honestly, he was not my friend when he arrived. Today he's my friend, but he's not everywhere my friend, let's be honest. At the right place.
Thank you. Tenho aqui uma pergunta que penso que...
And I have a question that I think is directed at both Eduardo and Afonso. How can we face sustainability in water management if Portugal still fails to have a management plan for droughts? Well, I don't mind adding something to this. I believe that more important than having a management plan for droughts is to have a management plan for water. A strategic plans that includes all the components, all the elements. Because water must be a reserve and also a day-to-day management tool, because we cannot endure without water. I saw another question on the side that asked if I'd said that Brussels shows lack of empathy when it comes to water issues. Brussels is the hub of Europe, it's the center. That's where things get discussed. I don't think Brussels has anything against water or the way we use water. But our trips to Brussels lead us sometimes to notice things that we often don't notice. Thierry, how many public parks are there in Brussels that are watered by sprinklers? Probably none. Well, at least the ones I walk through on foot when I go from the CAP home in Brussels to the European institutions. I'll walk across several parks, and they're not watered, and they're green all the time. In Portugal, there is no park will be green in the summer unless it's watered constantly. And this is just a fact. And we must come to terms with that. We need to understand this if we want to have some action, some activities. We have to have a connection to water that is much closer than the relationship northern countries have to this water in the summer. Maybe in the winter they envy us when we have sunny days and up there it rains all the time. So I would say it's not lack of empathy, but what there is different needs that the northern countries need to understand the need that we have to manage water in southern Europe. So when we look at the framework directive for water, I think the general idea is that we were left out. Southern Europe is left out, so it's harder to discuss these things. When it comes to the management plans for droughts, well, droughts are nowadays more violent than they were before, and they're connected to water scarcity, but also peaks of temperature. Sometimes we have drought in the winter, because in the winter that's when we should have some rain. And these winter droughts bring us peaks of high temperatures, and those will have consequences in our environment. And after that we have the summer droughts, with temperatures reaching sometimes very, very high temperatures, with huge impacts, especially for our forests. When it comes to our specific forest, the Mediterranean forest, the montado, that the Spaniards call adhesa, the cork tree, the oak tree, and further up north we have other species. Also the chestnut tree, typical of the Mediterranean, and they suffer a lot because we can't just remove them. With all these changes associated with water stress, and it's this powder keg that sometimes ignites and turns all areas of this country in true catastrophes. Not natural catastrophes, but, well, they're closely connected to nature because of the way they come about. So I think it's very important to have a management plan for drought, but it must be integrated into a strategic plan for the management of water. Afonso, I don't know if you want to add anything to this need to have a management plan for water? Well, yes, I think we were talking about a management plan for drought, but I agree with Eduardo when he says that more relevant than having a plan for droughts, it's important to have a management plan for water, because this must be thought out, and we have to include the natural waves and changes in the management of our resources. So I'd like to recall that the management of drought, and this is my area of expertise, at least theoretically, it starts with prevention. And this represents a paradigm shift. And when it comes to Australia and other areas with Mediterranean climate, who are often visited by drought, there's been a change of paradigm. It's important to go from the preventative management of drought and think of all the natural variations and accommodate them. Like Eduard said, our climate is almost violent, but this has been the climate for thousands of years. And we can't say that there's a drought in the Mediterranean summer. There's a dry season. And the drought is in the wet season, when it should rain and it doesn't rain. So we have a drought when it should be raining and it's not. We must think that the ecosystems and the species that we've used so far are adjusted to these conditions. But the fact is that this agriculture is becoming more and more intensive, and it's in more and more need of the water resources and the nutrients outside of the natural system, and that brings added issues. I'm not saying that this is unworkable, but this is a struggle. and we must be based in proper planning to see how best things can work. Thank you, Afonso. I think Eduardo has something to add. No, I don't want this to be just a dialogue. So I've been trying to hold back in some issues that sometimes I'd be inclined to comment on. But in fact, we've been having this climate for thousands of years, but it's changed. That's why we speak of climate change. And the changes happen both in the summer and in the winter. What happens in the summer? In the summer, the temperatures are getting higher and higher, and the humidity in the air has decreased. And it's that decrease that has caused the impact. Trees die. Trees die standing. It's a famous theatre play. But nowadays, many trees die because of these changes. That's why we're talking about the rise of North Africa, that it's rising towards Portugal. And we see that in our fauna as well, our animals. In this area of Ribatejo, we see animals now that when I was a kid, I didn't know they existed. And they're connected to the presence or absence of water. In the rice paddies, right now, we can see species that are coming from North Africa, and they weren't here 50 years ago. So we need to see how nature works, but in order to minimize the impact, we cannot just delete them. We need to understand that our presence in our territory is key. I don't want to start here talking about types of agriculture and saying that irrigation agriculture brings better nutrients or not. But what we have to do is we need to hold hands. Farmers have nothing against protecting the environment. Farmers have nothing against environmentalists. And the word environmentalist for environmentalists themselves is connected to something extreme. Sometimes there's some tunnel vision. We don't want farmer to be used as a dirty word. Farmers are not evil. All citizens in the cities need farmers. But this is a time in our lives where we're actually seeing some ghettos where some people defend their own dogmas, and it's harder to destroy a myth than to build a myth. Actually, it's easier to build a myth than to destroy it. Sometimes just a TV show will create a myth, and then it takes decades to destroy it. And when we let myths drag on, the wrong ideas are created. Sometimes it is picked up by the younger crowds. And if they grow up with wrongful myths, then they will commit mistakes. They will make mistakes. And so if there's issues now, if they're followed through, there will be bigger issues later. Sometimes there will, and sometimes there won't be. If we let this go on, there won't be a resolution. And one of the issues is desertification. Thank you. Thank you very much. More than barricades, we need to have contact points. Now, I'd like to give Bosco the floor.
How can water-saving technologies best be placed in the hands of farmers, and how do we ensure that they have the right knowledge and practice to employ them? Bosco.
Thank you for the question. To be honest, we are promoting awareness and training for employees and also for farmers, where we buy our raw materials. We are also promoting installation of more efficient cleaning facilities that consume less water. We are also using and reusing water throughout closed circuits, like the water used in the cleaning of the bottling lines or used for cooling, optimizing the process involved. I couldn't possibly dare to tell the farmers what they should do in their own businesses, but I'm sure that these examples could drive their attention to topics that they might put in place, and I'm sure there are a number of them, especially with that technology that has been addressed already in the roundtable some minutes ago, about how with simple smartphones you can really control irrigation and at the end use less amount of water, for example. But there are a number of them. We as an industry have been able and successful to put them in place already, and we will improve in the upcoming years too.
Thank you so much. Eu gostaria agora, antes do final deste debate...
Now, before we close this debate, I would just like to give 2 minutes to each of our guests, just for your final words. And we start with you, Eduardo. So let's start this final round with you as well. Just 2 minutes because we're running out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the fact that you've given me the floor again. Take the floor first. I don't have that much to add. I think that this exchange of views has been very, very interesting. And I think my main message, the takeaway message for me, we have an old saying, water is life. I don't think it's Portuguese, it's just water is life. And it's very expensive. It's very dear to us all, because with no water, no life. Some people ask me sometimes, should we increase the value of water, the price for water, the costs related to water? But water is priceless. Well, in other words, the value of water is absolute, but water has no price, it's priceless. So we can't live without blood, and we can't live without water. And I think this relation here is very often misinterpreted. I think the price we have to pay for using water is deeply aligned with how we manage it and use it. This is an ongoing and forever dialogue. So we need to build on this. Thierry, last words, please.
Also, that the two key elements of life are soil and water. And I will pick up what Eduardo was saying. You know, the symbol in South America of life is the frog. In the old ancient Indian tradition, it's a frog. It's exactly what you say. You need clean water to have a frog. And I think my colleague from WWF will agree on this. But from this debate, there was raised one element: the need of respect of the partner. Farmers need respect in order to appropriate themselves the new challenge. We are there. We offer our capacity. We offer our knowledge. We are real partner in the story. Of course, if we can cope together, all together with society, with the industry, with the NGOs, with the public, much better. But let's do it in confidence, and let's try to develop sustainable solution, really sustainable, which means the three elements. Sustainability means social, economic, and environmental. And if we have the balance in the three elements, we can be successful. So that's what I wish.
Thank you. Afonso, por favor.
You have the floor now. Final words, Afonso?
Sim, também tenho pouco a acrescentar.
Yes, I also don't have that much to add. I would just like to reiterate what other speakers have already said, this need to build bridges and have a dialogue with all our partners. I'm very proud to be a part of WWF and the Portuguese Association for natural conservation. And we work with companies that protect waters, others that pollute water. That is inevitable, but I think we need to have an open dialogue with everybody so that we can go forward. And I would just like to say that we're very interested in this type of dialogue. It's fundamental to have this type of dialogue. We need to break these barriers of environmentalists and farmers. We're all in this together. I'm not looking at just one of the pillars or one of the legs of that table. All of them are very important. Also, I'd like to say that it is of key importance when we're talking about territory management. We need to find ways to have sustainable activities where they can take place, but it means that we should not be afraid to say no to those sustainable activities where they don't belong. We also have to dwell on the legislative packet, the one that has been announced by the European Union with fundamental pillars, the Green Deal, the Water Initiative, and the Sustainability Initiative. They all are interlinked. They all should move together forward. I don't think they're over-ambitious. But I think we also need to understand that when it comes to the water framework, for instance, framework directive, we can't just go forward on that way. We can't just pinpoint and single out one species or one area. All is fundamental to bring everything together. We're talking about the water management or being sustainable on Earth, generally speaking. Bosco, please.
Thank you. Agriculture and agri-food and beverages will continue to grow and gain importance. Sustainability is a challenge for all the chain. No silos approach. We need to work together. Sustainability is also a proof of responsibility of our sector and companies. It is, in fact, a contribution to our communities, but above in the interest of all of us. But please don't be catastrophic. Be positive. Let's act with pride and determination. We can all be part of the solution. Let's work in partnership.
Thank you so much. Obrigada a todos os oradores. Eu penso que foi uma conversa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you. I think it was a very interesting conversation. I think we can all draw this conclusion that it's something that we cannot deal with alone. We all have to work together. We need to build this bridge. It is truly a table that needs all its legs equally. So thank you very much to all of you.